And it didn't really occur to me that John and Yoko could need or want my photos. They were John and Yoko. They were like a world famous act. Like,
Yeah.
everybody had seen pictures of them. And so it's kind of surprising. A few weeks later, when I ran into the drummer, he said, "We've been trying to find you. We want to use your pictures." And he brought me over to Bank Street to the apartment. And that was the first time I really sat down and got to talk to John and Yoko.
Hey, joining us today in the West Village, Mr. Bob Gruen. Bob,
Right.
welcome.
Very glad to be here. Thanks.
It's been a couple of years since we last spoke, and man, you've just blown up. It's unbelievable, man.
Been working a lot.
Yeah, museum retrospectives and books and all kinds of activity. Why do you think that is? I mean, what is our generation's age, is the nostalgia factor?
There
What
seems
is?
to be a lot of interest in rock and roll in general. In the 70s, it's becoming more and more mainstream. I mean, it's funny for me I first heard rock and roll on the radio when it started in the 50s, and it was a juvenile delinquent, kind of teenage fad. And they always kept saying, like, "Don't worry, it's not going to last." And now here it is more than 50 years later, and it's certainly the mainstream music of the world, actually. You go around the world, you hear rock and roll everywhere.
The Brooklyn Museum did a major retrospective. There you are all over the place. How did that feel when you got that phone call?
Pretty exciting, actually. It was very interesting because the woman who curated it, Gail Buckland, is a highly renowned photography expert. And she came in and she actually said, "I know a lot about photography, but I know nothing about rock and roll." And I, like many of the photographers, said, "Well, why are you doing a rock and roll show?" And she said, "I'm doing a photography show." And that's why the show is called Who Shot Rock and Roll? And it's about the photographers, and it's about the genre of rock photography. And there's 105 photographers in the show, about 180 pictures or so. And it's very exciting because it's about the photography, about the style, about the techniques, about how people find out about rock and roll through the photos, how the photos get taken. Some of the people in the show are not quite professional, but that's how sometimes those pictures get out as well. And so it really gives a broad overview of the whole genre of rock and roll photography. What I thought was really cute, my wife pointed out that the labels, usually in the photo show it's about rock and roll. But in this case, instead of saying Tina Turner, photo by Bob Gruen, it says Bob Gruen, photo of Tina Turner.
Nice.
And so it's about the photographers, about the artists, sort of if you had a show about Impressionism or, some genre of art. And so it's really the first time that rock and roll has been accepted and considered an art form in a major museum like that.
Now, as an art form, if we look at rock and roll photography, you've got the Morrison Hotel Gallery, which has really helped brand gentlemen like yourself and other women who might be taking these shots. There just seems to be finally there's due. Besides the pages of Rolling Stone and Cream Magazine and Circus and all the other periodicals, but now people are saying, "Wow, that shot, I remember seeing that as a teenager or a college student, or having that on my dorm wall." And
oh, my Led Zeppelin picture turns up a lot. People keep telling me they had that in their locker in high school, or on their college wall, or they still have it in their office.
And now you can maybe get paid for the print, where back in the day, I'm sure you made $100 on a shot like that for a magazine.
If that much, actually more like $35.
Right. So now
it's been a kind of low budget business.
Yeah.
You actually sell prints now for a lot more than I ever got paid for taking them in the first place.
Right.
Which is very exciting, for me. Of course, things cost a lot more nowadays. Yeah. But just to be able to sell the prints, to be able to sign prints as artwork and be respected and recognized as an artist is a tremendous thrill for me. Actually, when last summer I had a big collage, hundreds of my pictures all collaged together in a big 22-foot long piece on the wall of the Museum of Modern Art.
Right.
And my mom has been a member of Museum of Modern Art since it opened, and she often visits, and so to be able to visit and see my work there, that was a very big thrill for her.
Go to her friends. That's
And
my
for
son.
me, to, like I say, I was kind of vindicated.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't really waste my time hanging out with rock and roll bands.
No. How about, have you ever walked into a party, a stranger's apartment, and boom, there's one of your prints?
That has happened, yeah. It's always kind of exciting when I go visit somebody and they've got, one or a couple of my prints up on the wall. And sometimes they don't know it's me.
Right.
They just bought the photo.
Right.
And, and I tell them it's mine and they're like really excited about it.
That's nice. That's nice. What is it about these moments in time that resonate with people? And not just in rock and roll, but I just think you look at photography in general and you say, wow, that iconographic, that picture of Lennon that, we've seen, and, T-shirt vendors have, pimped
it gets around.
Yeah, it gets around. And you go, wow, what is it about the enduring aspect of an image?
I don't know. I think in some ways, it just reminds people of the excitement that they had, the excitement they felt, listening to the music or seeing the concert. I know, sometimes if you see a video, it kind of, captures that song or something. But just seeing that one moment, that exciting, if you can capture the excitement in one still moment, it just means so much more to people to remember the whole experience. Just for some reason, it works. I don't really know how to explain that.
Well,
of course, I don't really plan to retire. Most people who work a job that they don't like, they look forward all their life to retiring and finally getting to do what they want to do. But if you never get that job in the first place and you end up just doing what you want to do your whole life, and you don't get to retire really. But I don't really want to. I mean, I enjoy what I do, so I'm going to keep doing it.
And the monetary gains when you're in that lifestyle always seem to catch up at some point. Maybe a slave.
Let me know when.
Well, hopefully you can propagate that money.
Yeah. Yet. It's been a very low budget business.
Right.
The idea of rock photography, and as I've gotten more recognized, a lot more people have gotten into the business. The prices really haven't increased very much. I do sell prints more than I used to, but of course the expenses for things like that have grown a lot. I don't recommend people to get into rock photography if they're looking to make a lot of money. You have to go into banking where the money is.
Right.
If you're looking for money. But I certainly had a lot of good times. Some people like to have music playing in the background while they're working. I like to have it in the foreground.
Yeah.
And I always thought that I was kind of lucky, that I'd be out working in places that people had to pay to get into after work, And,
yeah. Well, that was part of your payment.
I didn't really get to have a date and just sit there and enjoy it. I had to be working.
Yeah.
So, there's two sides to everything.
What was your first big rock moment shooting a band? Do you remember that moment you say, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this, man. This is unbelievable.
Maybe when I met Tina Turner, actually. I don't know if it was actually shooting that concert, which was exciting. It was just a small show that Tina Turner did in a club in Long Island. I had kind of liked the picture, but I didn't realize at first just how good it was. It's this poster up here, a multiple exposure picture of Tina, which actually was one picture, but a strobe light was flashing, and so you get 5 different images of Tina in the one picture, and it really captures a lot of the excitement and the energy. And you just have to take a lot of pictures in order to get some good ones, and I just kept taking pictures all the time.
Man, you go down into your pad downstairs, and there are just wall to wall filing cabinets of photos.
I have a lot of pictures. I mean, that's what I tell people. People see the groups that I work with, The Clash or John Lennon or other famous groups, Led Zeppelin, and they think, wow, it's amazing you work with these famous groups, and they don't know how many thousands of groups I worked with that aren't famous, that never will be famous, that you'll never hear of. And that's all those files downstairs. We have thousands of them.
The Stones, we don't care about those guys. They've got so much press.
They were my favorite group growing up.
Yeah, of course.
They were the real rockers. Although actually, I got to say, The Who, I was even a bigger fan because they came more often. The Stones was always some big production, and they come like every year.
Even back in the early days.
Even in the '60s. But The Who would come every few months. They were really, just the most basic, minimal. Couple of black amps on stage, and the band, 3 guys playing music, 1 guy singing, and it was just they did more.
And it was symphonic.
Keith Moon played more music than most bands.
Well, yeah.
Keith Moon just filled everything in.
Yeah, he did.
But yeah, the Rolling Stones, I'm a big fan.
They're slow hand.
I mean, to me, the Rolling Stones are like the image of rock and roll. You see something like this, that says rock and roll.
Right.
You know,
Costello, that's a great
this
shot.
is very early on. Elvis was actually out in front of a CBS convention trying to get them to recognize him.
Really?
And he was just starting out.
Was this when he was with Stiff Records?
77, I think, in London on one of my visits over there. Yeah, I think he was still
Just
he was on
Stiff Records.
He just started out.
Now this, of course.
And this was actually the day I met Led Zeppelin. Lisa Robinson called me up. I did quite a lot of work with Lisa Robinson. She was a major music columnist,
Sure.
syndicated to I think 175 papers around the world.
Now with Vanity Fair.
And now she's with Vanity
Yeah.
Fair. So she had access to all the major groups, and it was a big thing in my career that she often used me for photography. She called me up one day and said, I think it was Cincinnati or Pittsburgh, we were going to with Led Zeppelin. And I said, really, how are we going to get there? She said, oh, don't worry, they have a plane. And I was like, oh, fine. Okay,
Yeah, of course.
Plane, sure. And we get to the airport, there's this monstrous plane. And I think either Lisa or Robert said, take a picture of the band in front of the plane. And they walked over and just stood there, and we took a couple of shots. And it was really, nowadays, in order to do a photo session, you have to, email people months in advance and run things by the lawyers and get a stylist and a caterer and everything else. This was just like, I was literally
Spur of the
limo on the way into the plane. You go, oh yeah, let's stand by the plane for a minute. And if you rented it for more than a day, if you rented it for a couple of weeks, they paint your name on it.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't actually own the plane, but that week it was their plane.
Right.
They rented the plane. And actually taking pictures with Elton and with Alice a couple of times where I had the crew and so on posing in front of the plane, and the plane is in the background, and you can see the whole plane. It doesn't look nearly as big when the band is way out and there's this plane out in the background on the runway. But being like almost, up against the
Right
plane,
next to the engine.
it's just the whole world behind them is this airplane.
It's huge. Yeah.
So it really makes it look a lot bigger. And it's just that great moment. I don't know, with the wind blowing and Robert kind of having his arm up like, look at my plane. But yeah, here's the Who.
Oh, yeah.
After Moon destroyed the stage. He was a powerful one. And we got to be friends, actually. This was when Keith Moon was friends with Sean Arnott that I did a lot of work with. And he was...
Friends with Sean Arnott after Woodstock, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know
They
where,
both played Woodstock.
Yeah, maybe they met there or something. But anyway, they ended up friends. Sean Arnott was a wild group, real 50s rockers.
Yeah.
And Keith was their announcer at Carnegie Hall. And he came out in a sequin dress and a wig for one part of the show, and then he came out in this top hat with the ascot. And this actually turned into a cover for Rolling Stone magazine.
It did. Yeah, there was nobody like him on the drums.
There's nobody like him in the world.
Yeah.
He was quite unique. He was so fast, so manic. I mean, but he had his, sober-looking moments. I don't know if he was sober. But.
Getting back to the trust issue, and you mentioned some iconographic rock bands. How hard was it to gain that access, that trust with them? Like a band like Zeppelin,
It depends. You don't sort of set out to become friends with somebody, or determined to gain somebody's trust.
Right.
I'm open, I'm honest, and I think the honesty has a lot to do with it. I try to do a very good job. I try to work with the artist. I don't try to embarrass the artist. As often, some photographers don't ever want to show the pictures to the artist. They don't want to be censored. They don't want to be controlled. I would rather know what the person wants to look like and know which ones of my photos they like, and I'll use those. Because, first I go through them. I pick out the ones I like. And then as often as I can, I try to reach the artist and see which ones are those that they like. And I'm not opposed at all to not using a couple of mine, a couple of the ones I liked if they don't like them.
Well, you had the ultimate...
Because then you get to go back. Then they'll say, well, this is a good guy. This is a guy who respects us. Let's hire him again.
I was going to say, sorry for interrupting you, that happened with John Lennon, where he used your shot, wall and bridges, and, some of the other imagery that we see, him flashing the peace sign.
And that was the same kind of thing. I didn't set out to become John Lennon's friend. Like many people, we heard that John arrived in New York in, I think it was 1970, 71, he got to New York. And there was rumors flying around the neighborhood. Within a couple of weeks, everybody knew where he was. He lived right around the corner here on Bank Street.
Oh, he did?
And everybody knew, but nobody would go and bother him or anything. Well, some people might have, but I didn't.
Right.
And but of course, I was really excited, hoping to meet him. But you want things to happen naturally. And so one night, I went to a benefit at the Apollo Theater. that I was going to see Aretha Franklin because it was a benefit for the families of the prisoners who were injured in the riot at the Attica prison.
State, yeah.
And as I walked in, I heard John and Yoko announced, and I was like, "Oh my God, John Lennon and Yoko Ono are here!" And I remember feeling like the excitement of the moment that they were there. And I took a couple of pictures. And then backstage, they were waiting for the car. And a bunch of people were taking pictures of them, snapshots, posing with them. And they were very friendly about it and open. And I took a couple of pictures. And at one point, John said, what happens? People are always taking our picture like this, and we never get to see them. What happens to all these pictures? And so I just kind of said, well, I live around the corner from you. I'll show you my pictures. And he said, you live around the corner? Well, just drop them under the door then. And I didn't actually slip them under the door, but a couple of days later I rang the bell, and Jerry Rubin answered the door, which was really exciting, And I said I had something with John and Yoko. He asked if they were expecting me, and I said no, and I just came to leave this for them, and I left it as a gift. And sometime later, after we did get to know each other, Yoko mentioned that was kind of important, that they were surprised, like, who is this guy who's not asking for something? Like, everybody who met them wanted something. And I was the only one who was just kind of subtle and gave them something instead. And it didn't really occur to me that John and Yoko could need or want my photos. They were John and Yoko. They were like a world famous act. Like, everybody had seen pictures of them. And so it was kind of surprising. A few weeks later, when I ran into the drummer, he said, we've been trying to find you. We want to use your pictures. And he brought me over to Bank Street to the apartment. And that was the first time I really sat down and got to talk to John and Yoko. And we found we had a similar sense of humor. We got along really well. At the end of that day, Yoko said I should stay in touch with him, come by the studio more often. And so one thing led to another. We just liked each other. And then my relationship with John and Yoko, which developed to the point where we actually did become friends. We would drop by back and forth. People would send John and Yoko.
You mean he would just stop here to see you?
They would come over to show a videotape because I had the machine. Rather than buy one, they would come and play it. Because I was literally around the corner.
Right, yeah.
So they would come over with a tape, or we'd stop there. After they got to know my wife back then, they hired her as a personal assistant to work in their house.
Wow.
And that helped our relationship, develop. But we just kind of got along really well, and a lot of times we just sit around smoking, watching TV, talking. He was a very, very funny guy.
Right.
Like you see in the movies, he was always really quick with the one-liners, but very perceptive and very intelligent. So I always felt that I learned something every time I talked to him, but I always had a really good time doing it because we laughed so much. And,
right.
It always felt really good.
Of course, that's not a very well-known photo.
This has got to be pretty well-known. Very well-known. It seems to be everywhere. I've seen it around the world. I've seen bootleg T-shirts everywhere.
Everywhere.
I've seen peace written in Portuguese in Brazil. I've seen it in Europe, in Japan, all over the world. And I don't really know how to explain why this photo is the one that people like, but people just really seem... He's confident. He's available.
But he's got a New York attitude,
open,
don't you think?
He's got a New York attitude. I gave him this shirt, actually about a year before the shoot. The story's gotten around. People think I took the shirt off my back, but actually I wore this kind of shirt a lot, every day almost.
Sleeveless?
I had 6 of them.
Right.
I would cut the sleeves off. It came with sleeves.
Right.
But I thought, the New York look, you got to cut the
Toughen
sleeves
up.
off. Yeah. And so I cut, and it was just these guys in Times Square. You didn't even buy them in the store. Just some guys sold them on the sidewalk.
Right, right.
Every few weeks I'd see them and I'd buy another one. And one night when I was going to visit John and Yoko in the studio, I saw the guy selling them, and I thought, I'll get one for John. And I picked it up and cut the sleeves off and gave it to him. And then we took a couple of pictures. That's where this one was done, was on the wall there. He was just sitting on the wall. And then I suggested... that since we had the whole background of New York City around us, I said, "Do you still have that shirt I gave you last year?" And he knew right where it was.
Yeah.
And he went and put it on. And like I said, it was a nice day. He was looking good. He was feeling confident. I feel tremendously lucky. It's like winning the lottery because there have been tens of thousands, probably millions of pictures taken of John Lennon. And this is the one that people like the most. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm very lucky that
That's.
I mean, there's a lot of people I met that I didn't become friends
right,
with.
Of course.
I met tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing about photography is you have to know so many people because people only need pictures once in a while. And it's not a regular thing.
Right.
And it's sort of like you get to know somebody, you meet somebody at a party, and you make a connection. They might not call you for 2 or 3 years. But then when they do, you have to be available that day, at that time, when they need you. And if you're not available, they'll call the next person.
Next guy.
If you're not even home to answer your phone, I mean, I've gotten a message on my machine and called back an hour later, and they go, "Oh, sorry, we got somebody else."
Oh.
Photography's it's a lot of competition, and it's a tough way to make a living.
But fun.
But fun.
Yeah. I mean, God, as you said, God bless you can have fun doing what you like to do.
Yeah.
Were you doing your own darkroom printing here in this space?
Yeah, downstairs here in this space. I moved into this space in 1975. I had a place downstairs in 1970.
Right.
And pretty soon I got a darkroom assistant. Not that I could really afford it, but I'm not that good in the darkroom.
Really? Oh, a little known secret.
Yeah, and I can do it. And actually, it's interesting because the prints I made in the 70s are all kind of a little bit lighter and a little gray. It's not a very strong contrast, which worked to my advantage because most of the rock magazines back then were printed on a very cheap newsprint kind of paper. And I had a printing course in high school, so I knew about the process, how it worked, that it's all, a halftone, that a photo, when it's printed in a magazine, is actually a series of little dots.
Right.
And on that cheap paper, those dots would spread out. And if you made a decent quality print, it would look very dark in a magazine. Whereas if you made a light gray print, it would get darker and it would look right.
The contrast would be better.
So my poorly printed pictures look pretty good in the magazine.
When did you switch from film to digital?
About 2000. When the digital cameras finally got to be a decent enough quality that I could sell the images to magazines and publish them and use them. Before that, it was still kind of the quality wasn't that good.
Right.
But around 2000, the quality got better. I started using the Canon camera around 1990 because it had an autofocus and the electronics were really good.
Right.
And then in 2000, they came out with some really good digital cameras, and I've been using them ever since. And part of it was, one was the convenience of the way it worked, and the other was that the world was starting to move on that level. So that nowadays, you can't really send a print or a slide to a magazine. Anybody under 25, they've probably never even seen a slide. They don't know what that little plastic piece of film means, and if they don't have scanners in magazines anymore.
Right.
I mean, for a while during the transition in the 90s, you would send a print or a slide, and they would scan it and put it in the magazine. But then by 2000, they wanted a scan. They wanted you to start emailing scans or sending a disc with a scan. And so we had to get into it. And but that's the way the modern world is.
Yeah.
And you just got to get with the program.
Now it's all about.
I don't dwell in the past. I don't miss
Yeah.
it. I don't say I wish it was 1970.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm alive today, and I'm alive to see it. You cannot go back.
Right.
So I'm just happy to be going forward.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, then let me just sum up and say I've kind of come full circle because I did this picture of the Clash when they were doing a TV interview at the Rockefeller Center at the RCA building, and I knew that the roof had the best view. And I did this picture, and then shortly after they closed the roof, they renovated the elevators or something. They closed the roof. They've recently reopened it, and I heard that Green Day was doing Saturday Night Live. I said to them, "We got to go up on the roof," because Green Day's a band that I get along with very well. I'm good friends with them. When I mentioned to them that this is the same building that their favorite Clash picture was taken, they said, "Yes, we're going upstairs." And so, I had to get a picture of myself there.
Absolutely.
But for me, this kind of brings it full circle to go back to that same spot with what I consider the best band around nowadays.
Absolutely.
Green Day.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a great history lesson about life and about being in New York and seeing the changes in New York.
It's been a very fun life, and but also very free. I mean, I try to keep my options open and be able to make my own decisions, and I've paid for that in the sense of not having a lot of money, but that was never my goal.
Right.
My goal was to have a life, and I've had a good life.
Good deal. Bob Gruen, Dusty Wright. We'll see you guys soon.
Okay.